This is Diamond D with where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving.
This is Diamond D with Love and Happiness, where I'm giving you some love advice, some happiness advice, some everyday good advice to make your day a little more loving. Our guest today is Jonathan Carrington. Mr. Carrington is a licensed resident mental health counselor in Northern Virginia at Atone Therapy, currently supporting and guiding teens and young adults as they navigate life and relationships in high school, college, and career. Jonathan has served military service members, veterans, and their families with health and wellness resources. Previously, he assisted homeless individuals and families, youth, seniors, professional artists, and other groups in areas of community care and capacity building support. Jonathan has served as a public health professional for the past 15 years at several human and health services organizations located in Northern and Southern Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Maryland. Jonathan earned a bachelor's degree in theater arts administration from Howard University and a master's degree in professional counseling from Liberty University. Welcome, Jonathan Carrington, to the show.
Hey.
I know Liberty is a big school when it comes to divinity and theology. And having that degree in counseling, can you talk a little bit about pastoral counseling and the benefits of it?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be part of your show. So pastoral counseling. So counseling really has very similar goals, right? We all want to help people live happy and healthy lives, helping people overcome challenges in their disabilities, resolve their relationship issues, and really guiding and supporting people as they go along their journey. Now, pastoral counseling, the only difference between regular counseling and pastoral counseling is that the belief and perception about the world in which we live in, right? That's the easy way to understand it. And so pastoral counselors tend to view issues through the lens of biblical scripture. So many pastoral counselors have this belief that the Bible has the answer to many, if not all, problems or challenges. And pastoral counselors are really helping people to organize and structure human life or humanity through the lens of Christian or the way in which the Bible addresses people. So that's a good way to understand like what is pastoral counseling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's very important because I think sometimes when you're looking at a pastor or someone who is over the church, people forget that those pastors and those church leaders, not only do they need prayer for support, but they also need someone to listen to their problems and whatever they're going through. Because sometimes when you're in that role, you do have a lot of challenges because you're carrying other people's burdens. You're hearing what they're going through on a day-to-day basis as when you have parishioners. So definitely having that kind of support, to having that outlet to say, even though I'm over a church, even though people are counting on me, I do need to take care of myself and I need someone to talk to. So definitely, I think there's a need for that.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it is. I was just having a conversation with a pastor in Washington, D.C. about some of the challenges that he is facing right now because of the pandemic and for all the demands and expectations that are kind of in his lap. And pastors, definitely deal with the issues and needs of the congregants or the parishioners, and they have their own kind of challenges with trying to articulate certain issues and things that, a lot of people, don't really understand. And so, there's a burden that many pastors and preachers and ministers are facing, especially right now with the way, the world is. So, most definitely.
Absolutely. And I think that there should be no shame in that. Right. I know some pastors who are going through marital counseling, and there should be no shame whatsoever to say that even though I'm a pastor, even though people expect me to have everything together, it's okay if I don't and I need help as well. So absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. I definitely co-sign on that. To me, that shows true strength in terms of, it's okay to ask for help, regardless of what your position is. You want to try to get better. And to me, that shows strength that you want to improve as a person. That's good leadership as well to, admit those type of things. Because a lot of times we, hide within our fears thinking, oh, we need help. Then that means we're going to be judged. And it's like, no, that's not the case. Like, we're all human beings. So we all have a right to get some help. So my question is, how did you down the line get into this career path of wanting to be a therapist?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. So, as you heard in my bio, I was in the theater arts, performing arts realm before I became integrated into the psychology space. And what kind of led me was, around like the recession, 2010, 2011, I was going through a very difficult time in my life. I was in a very dark place. I didn't really know where to go, where to turn to. And what actually moved me into the to go to Liberty is because before I moved back to Roanoke, Virginia, which is my hometown, and from DC, left everything behind, and I started my life over. And I met this woman at this organization, and she was a prophet. She was prophetess, and she was just like, you need to come to this church. You need to come and see what it's about. I don't know. I didn't really know her. And I was like, okay, sure. Why not? And so long story short, I got involved in the ministry, and I was in the ministry for about 4 or 5 years before I actually enrolled at Liberty to get the master's degree. And so in that ministerial experience, I was exposed to many things that really piqued my interest and really was an opportunity to really build my faith and my spirituality, and got involved with the youth ministry and did Bible study and sermons and preaching. And it was probably the most powerful, life-changing experience I've ever had in my life that time. And so that's kind of how I wanted to go deeper in my relationship. And Liberty was a safe space for me to really explore some of the things that were happening to me prior to enrolling into the school. So that's kind of how I got into counseling and psychology, and just that I know God was just really, really dealing with me at that time, and I'm so happy that I made that decision to go forward in that.
Yeah, I'm happy too. Definitely, you are where you're supposed to be in your life's plan and purpose. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, can you talk a little bit about soul ties and sort of like that law of attraction, how people who may have experienced trauma sort of connect with someone else who may have experienced trauma, and how those kind of soul ties are helpful and could be detrimental?
Yeah, I can kind of talk a little bit about soul ties, or in the world of psychology, we call it trauma bonds. A lot of us are, really searching for love and connection. I mean, that's a human need. But many of us are searching for that love and connection in all the wrong places. And so we kind of go out into the world because we're not feeling loved or connection at home. And we tend to bond or tie to things that are really not connected to the truest essence of how God has designed us to be, and which is the creation of a soul tie or a trauma bond. We take some of the traumas of feeling unlovable or unworthy or unseen or understood, the things that God is really supposed to supply for us as human beings, and we go out into the world and we connect to people, places, and things in order to get those needs met, whether it be substance abuse or sex or anything, people or relationships. And so we have all these soul ties that are connecting themselves to ourselves. And so it can be very destructive, and very harmful on the body, spirit, and mind when we have these unresolved traumas or these unresolved issues that we are kind of putting putting it out into the atmosphere in the universe, and we have no idea why people are getting abused or going through all these different changes and relationships and things like that. It's because of the trauma bond. It's because of the soul ties that were originated at earlier parts of life that have been connected to them in the present day. And so that's kind of like a good way for the audience. I mean, you can go deeper and deeper into soul ties and trauma bonds, but that's kind of to the extent of what it is.
Okay, well, to elaborate on that, so let's say in terms, I'm gonna base it like based off the core of like a relationship with family or your closest friends. What are signs to possibly look out for, just to be aware in terms of if a friend or family member maybe needs some counseling, or to be able to urge them on to, take that next step into counseling, to try to see the signs before it gets out of hand, to, be that helping hand for a person?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. There are many signs, in terms of just people and relationships. People are holding on to a lot of wounds that they've been walking around with, whether it be childhood traumas, neglect or abandonment or rejection that took place with a parent or caregiver. If they're kind of, in experiences where they're, talking about their childhood, or there's certain things or certain behaviors that you might see in certain people, whether it be emotional outbursts or things like that, anger, people having resentment or jealousy. Usually that's stemming from some wounds that happen in earlier parts of life that have not been truly resolved yet. Communication issues. If there's a bickering, conflict in relationships, that stems from past experiences that are brought into current experiences. Infidelity, trust issues, betrayal by authority figures that were in their life before. The betrayal did not have to do with that particular individual, but that they're being betrayed by. It was more so. Some of these experiences are coming out from earlier parts, and now they're like manifesting because they've not been resolved. Issues with just all types of things: sexual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. There's a lot of things that people jump into relationships and they think that these relationships are going to heal them and fix them and make them feel better. But ideally, they're somehow like avoiding or like evading some of the past hurts and traumas that were experienced early on in life. And so my job as a counselor is to really help people to process those thoughts and those emotions and those feelings, so they're not entering into relationships with all this weight, compounded weight. They can get out of their system, and so they can connect to people in healthy attachments or healthy relationships.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there's no one size fit all solution to someone's problem, but how do you handle a situation where someone who has trust issues and trust issues from either a bad relationship or some type of previous trauma, and then constantly go into relationships where the person is cheating? What kind of solution or assessment is going on with that? Because to me, in analyzing it, I would think it was some type of soul ties, trauma bonding situation. But I don't know. What would you think about that?
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, it depends on what the issue is. I mean, trust issues can really be about, especially when it comes to emotions or feelings and things like that. A lot of times people who have trust issues did not grow up in families where emotions and feelings were validated or affirmed or understood. It was more so, well, you get over it, or not really sitting with people and empathizing with them and things like that. And so ideally the trust or the infidelity or the lack of loyalty or just not being honest is usually like a coping mechanism. It's like a defense mechanism to really kind of not really deal with what they're dealing with or feeling their feelings and telling the truth and being honest. And so in terms of working with someone that's dealing with trust or issues around that, it really is getting to the root of what is happening with your feelings, what's happening with your thoughts, and why do you feel a need to withhold and keep that from someone else, or articulating that. Or it could be that there's a lack of boundaries in terms of trust being violated in earlier parts of life where information was disclosed and there was no secrecy or privacy or lack of confidentiality, and that was breached at an earlier part. So we want to get to that history and really understand what's happening there, so that eventually they can build, they can trust themselves first with their own feelings and their own emotions, and then eventually get to the point where they can start trusting others. But if you haven't unpacked that trauma, that history, you're going to walk around having trust issues and feeling like the world is out to get you, and you won't express your emotions or your feelings or anything. You'll become very untrusting of everyone. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, with that being said, let's say if I had someone, or if I come in for one of your therapy sessions, I read on your bio that you specialize in quite a few therapies. For example, like family systems. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. Electric, ECLE.
Eclectic.
Okay, sorry. And jugging is like an example. Can you elaborate on a couple of those, or what you specialize in?
Right, absolutely. Well, many of those are therapeutic approaches to help to really understand the person. What was described on the profile is like when you talk about eclectic, it's more about like integrating different types of approaches to really help to understand individual that we're seeing, the client. Jungian is more about exploring the different parts of yourself and really like looking at all sides to yourself versus the side of yourself that you present to the world. So that's kind of like unpacking your parts and all of that. But ideally, like my work is very integrative and really humanistic, is looking at you as a human being, right? Or even a spiritual being, and just really like honoring all sides of you so that you can eventually walk into the world and be who God has designed you to be, and not feel shame or guilt or any type of resistance with showing up the way that you want to show up on your pathway. And so that's really what I do in my practice, is really to really unpack all sides to yourself so that you can be who God has made you to be, who God has designed you to be. Because we have this mask that we put up to the world, because we want to be accepted and loved and appreciated and all these things.
Right.
But it's like, why? Why? Let's embrace all of who we are, whether we will be rejected from the world or not. Embrace all sides and love ourselves unconditionally, just like God loves us unconditionally. People are always going to be people. People are going to judge, criticize, condemn, devalue. That's people, that's human beings. But what's important is for us to come back to ourselves and to really connect to that God self, to God who has designed us to be the way that he has designed us to be, without trying to compare ourselves to people and places and things. That's not why we're here. That's not why we're here. Right. So that's the work that I do and the practice that. So all of those kind of approaches is really just to get you centered back to who you are.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's deep. That's really deep. How long does it take for your average client who is going through the different processes and the different means that you have available to find who they truly are? How long does that process take? Is it like a year process? Is it a lifelong process? Is it 6 months? Or kind of give me an idea of the timeline on that.
It depends. Sometimes clients will walk into the session, maybe 1 session, 2 sessions, and then realize that they don't need counseling, they don't need therapy, because all I did was hold up the mirror and said a few words to show them who they really are. And that's all they needed to go along the path, along their journey. They didn't need anything else. And then you have clients who have gone through deep, intense levels of trauma and abuse over the course of their lives. And they need that intensive therapy. They need that treatment to really unpack all the stuff that has been layered upon them. And it could be years, it could be months, it could be, but when you're dealing with a trauma survivor, it usually takes longer than someone that's coming in and they're just trying to just get some understanding of how to approach certain things. So it just really depends on the person. Yeah.
Yeah, understandably so, because what I've observed is sometimes when people go through those types of traumatic experiences, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's physical abuse, whether it's mental abuse, they find themselves in a cycle. And sometimes you see a woman who has experienced domestic abuse go to a different man or woman and feel that same domestic abuse, whether it's physical, verbal, or mental. And I'm always fascinated by why that's the case. Have you observed that?
Oh yeah, domestic violence clients. Yeah, there's a cycle of abuse that tends to happen, and they jump from relationship to relationship to relationship. And it's like when you're working with them, it's kind of like what they're doing is there's a reenactment of the traumas that happened in earlier parts of their life, and so they're going into these relationships in order to feel good enough or feel valuable enough or worthy enough. And there's this pattern, there's this cycle, because there's been a conditioning and a programming to believe that another person is going to add value or to fill them up, and so domestic violence is a very hard one, because there's so much that comes with that, and there's so many dynamics that are at play. And so it is important for, when you are working with domestic violence survivors or victims, to exercise compassion and empathy and sensitivity, because they are dealing with some overwhelming amounts of pain and heartache and suffering that needs to be treated with care. And that's why they have domestic violence specialists. They have specialists that work with just domestic violence victims or survivors, because that abuse cycle is so complicated and complex. Yeah.
Have you seen a difference in terms of doing online therapy compared to face-to-face therapy throughout that time, or is it still kind of that same connection you have with a client in terms of doing it more online than face-to-face?
Yeah, I will have to say about COVID, there's a lot of clinicians who were faced with moving away from the in-person office setting and transitioning into the remote telehealth, telemedicine space. And so, and there were a lot of clinicians that just decided to just stop doing therapy in general, which is a threat to the mental health community, because there's already a shortage of clinicians that are doing this work. And so, so while the clinicians were making the transitions, the patients have had to make transitions into the telehealth space, and it has made some positive, it has some positive benefits for the patient, because while a lot of people who would not have otherwise gone to treatment or therapy by driving to an appointment or whatnot, telehealth has afforded them the ability to really use their device, their phone or their computer, and the accessibility to treatment has definitely improved as a result of the remote, work at home or telehealth option. And so that is why there is such an increased demand for services, is because now there's clinicians that are doing telehealth, and hopefully it will be something that will be normal, and we won't have to go back to the office. But some people are now that things are reopening again, are offering more of a hybrid model. I plan to return back in September, but I'm doing just telehealth right now until things kind of, become a little bit more organized. But I know a lot of clinicians are doing hybrid where they offer, remote sessions, but they offer, appointments in the office as well. So that is offering patients more ability to see their therapist or to get therapy, and also just access is becoming a lot better as well. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here. And
Yeah.
how can people get in contact with you?
Oh, great. I would love for you all to contact me. I have a website, www.jonathancarrington.com. Please contact me if you have questions, if you need support, resources, let me know. I'm in Northern Virginia, but I'm on all the social medias. You just type my name, Jonathan Carrington. Feel free to reach out for more information, but yeah, so it's me.
Thank you, Mr. Carrington. And DJ Duke, any last words?
Well, this has definitely, again, been another insightful session. I feel like the things that I've learned today, definitely I want to try to, it's good that we can bring this knowledge to people because some people really just don't know, or let alone just don't think, it's not the right thing or the toughest thing to do in terms of, seeking help. And we all need help. Again, like it's okay. It's like you don't make it to where you are without help. So why not get the proper help, especially mental, because your mental is very important. It can make you don't think clearly if you have like a clouded mind and you make judgment decisions that can affect your whole life and you without, having a clear head. So I hope people really, listen to your advice and be able to check your website out and, take advantage of this opportunity to be able to learn and enlighten yourself for this.
And I'm Diamond D with Love and Happiness, leaving you with this quote of the day. Don't be scared to be you, and reminding you that God loves you.